Kelly, thanks for coming in to speak with me.
Thank you.
What's the issue that you'd like to talk about? What would be useful to explore?
Well, recently I've been thinking about my own professional development and making some investment in that again. I've always enjoyed my schooling, and I've had a lot of schooling since I've been in the work environment, but the past several years have not probably done as robust an investment as I had in the past, and have started to really miss that. And so I'm contemplating, you know, what my next step should be in terms of my own professional development.
Okay, great. So you're wondering sort of what to do, what to study, what all of that. Okay, great. Are you comfortable talking about that in this environment? Okay, great. I mean, I'll ask you a bunch of questions. I'll try not to get too personal. Okay. If there's anything you'd prefer not to talk about, please feel free to pass on that. So, okay. Let's. I guess the first question for me is how important is this as an issue for you? Is it like sort of number 10 on the radar? Is it sort of number 5? Number top 3? Where is it on your radar of things you're thinking about?
Probably a 6, which may not sound high, but I find it rising.
It's 6 and rising. Okay. Yeah. Rising with a bullet, or rising sort of slowly?
It's sort of in between. I mean, I would say that over time it's become more and more important.
Right. Okay. How long have you been thinking about it for?
I would say in earnest the past 6 to 9 months. It was sort of out there before that, but really in earnest the past 6 to 9 months.
Okay. All right. So you're interested in working out what to do next in your professional development.
Yes.
And it's about 6th on the priorities.
Yeah.
But it's coming up. Yeah. And about 6 to 9 months it's been coming up more. And how often do you notice it coming up? Like every day, every hour? Yeah,
I would say every day.
Every day,
at this point. And again, that's why I think it's rising, as I'm noticing it more and more.
Yeah, it's rising every day. Okay. Yes. All right. And is there like an urgency involved with it is there a reason it's kind of coming up, or is it just becoming more important over time?
I think the urgency is partly sort of a personal drive that I miss. I miss having something that's very tangible in my development. But also in my work environment, the role that I've been in the past year and a half, I think to go to the next level requires some investment.
Right, okay. Yeah. So it sounds like you're kind of itching for something new, for some stimulation there.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. All right, so how could I best help you think this through?
I think maybe talking through maybe steps or how to execute, because I think once something rolls around in your mind for a while, it just sort of can stick there and be an interesting thought, but getting to the action portion can be a little more challenging.
Okay, so are you at the stage where you know what you need to do and need to take action, or you
I think that's just the point where I'm trying to figure out what the action is, to be very candid with you.
Okay.
I think I know some of my options are, but in terms of taking an actual next step, I'm not quite there.
Have you set yourself a deadline yet?
No, I have not.
Okay.
And that may be a good thought. I had the thought previously that if by the end of the year I knew what I wanted to do, then I could do something in the spring.
Right.
But I certainly hadn't put that in any firm. Hadn't said that out loud. Certainly hadn't put it in a firm statement.
Yeah. Well, that's just my idea. I don't want to say that you should or have to set a deadline. It's just one possibility.
Right.
So, okay, well, it sounds like you're at a point where you're ready to kind of move, move forward in some way. Are you clear about the direction, and it's just the decision? Is that where you are?
I think I'm settling on a direction, and maybe that's been part of the issue is trying to figure out which direction to go. I think more and more I've settled on a direction, but again, haven't taken any.
Right. So it sounds like you're at that level of like, kind of firming up a lot of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you interested in moving forward, in seeing if I can help you move forward in that process? Okay.
Yes.
So which area would be more useful to focus on, the decision or the action? Or sort of like the area or the taking action?
The action.
Taking action, okay. So what do you think you need to get yourself committed?
I think probably to have conversations both at work and at home. I think for me part of the issue, now that we're talking through this, is that it's sort of a work-life issue. It's not one or the other. It's a little bit of both. I've got probably some conversations I need to have both at work in terms of getting support, because the direction is definitely in line with my professional career, but also managing what happens then at home as well.
Right. So have you started talking to those people and doing that?
No.
Okay.
Just at that's what I'm saying. I'm just at that point. I've had the thought for a while, and I think it's just taking that brave next step of saying it out loud and making it happen.
Yeah, and I appreciate your honesty and candor there. And the word brave, I can hear that's there's some energy in there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So have you seen what there is to do next?
Yeah, I think there are some conversations to be had. Again, and I guess it goes back to what I said earlier. When it's in your head, it's one thing. It's the getting it out that almost in and of itself is the next step.
Yeah, would it be a support to you to talk about a deadline for that, or are you clear when it's going to happen?
No, I like that idea.
Yeah? Okay.
And I guess in keeping with some of the actions that I think I'd like to take probably need to come to fruition in the spring. I think it really does, if I'm going to do it, necessitate making a decision before the end of the year and having those conversations, which... Again, having said that out loud now becomes more real.
Right, even saying it twice is like a little bit easier. I can see that.
Happen.
What about setting a deadline around when you'd have those conversations? Would that help you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and actually now that I'm thinking about that, I have an opportunity to have one of those conversations in 2 weeks because I have a career development meeting with my manager, so that timing is probably sort of convenient. Yeah, and then in terms of having those conversations at home, there's certainly plenty of opportunity to do that.
Okay.
So I think the first thing is really to get at work to have that conversation,
to do that
get
first.
The support. Absolutely.
All right. So it sounds like you've got a clearer path now to speak to them in 2 weeks and then tackle the big one and do that at home. Okay. Absolutely. So how are you feeling coming out of this conversation?
Good. I think being able to talk through it and just get it out loud and make it more real, that in and of itself is helpful.
Yeah, it kind of looks like you've got a clearer map of what to do from here.
So.
You look clearer about your personal plan. So.
Yeah, I think so.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Kelly, I'm really interested in hearing your experience of that conversation and just kind of breaking it down a bit and getting some feedback. You know, I guess just overall, first of all, how was that for you, that coaching dialogue?
That was good. It moved me forward without pushing me.
How, in what way? Sort of what? Not that I want to just give myself lots of positive feedback here, but what did work? What worked for you specifically?
Along the way, you did checkpoints with me about whether the next action was mine. Essentially,
right.
I mean, would it help if we set a deadline? And you gently put the action back on me and held me accountable. But it was ultimately my decision.
Right.
I got to choose which way we took the conversation. And at every point that there was an action or decision, it was because I owned that.
Yeah.
You may have prompted me about whether I wanted to own it, but ultimately I owned it.
Yeah, and that's certainly important. I can actually remember the question. You know, would it support you to have to be setting a deadline in this area rather than what's your deadline, which would be much more intrusive.
Right.
And I guess I'm always trying to ensure that you are in the driver's seat, making the decisions, and that way, we're never kind of, hitting up against each other.
Right.
That I'm actually helping you to think rather than telling you how to think.
Absolutely.
All the way through. What else? Do you remember the moment when you kind of had an insight? There was a moment that you sort of smiled and came alive. Do you remember that moment?
One that sticks in my mind, I don't know if it's the one you're thinking of, is when we were talking about would it help to have the conversation, and it was like, well, yeah, it would help. And this opportunity is coming up in just 2 weeks that will kind of, conveniently it's there and it will help move me forward. Right,
so there was a moment that you went, you kind of thought in an instant, like, I've got that meeting coming up, that could be my deadline.
Right.
And then what I thought I saw you think was, once I have that meeting, then I could tackle the really hard conversation at home. How did you feel in that moment when you made that connection?
Almost a relief of, it's not just floating around in my mind. It's not a worry or concern. It's an action now. And so, a little bit of excitement that it can actually move forward because it has been building over time. And there comes a point where it builds and it's not just an interesting thought anymore. You have to take it and go do something.
Yeah, it kind of looked like a spark of energy there.
Right.
Like, I know what to do now, and I can kind of see. And what if I'd said, this is a bit of a loaded question, I guess, but I want to ask it, what if I'd said, why don't you bring it forward at your next career planning meeting? If I'd said that to you, what would you have done?
It still would have been a good idea. It wouldn't have been my idea, I suppose. Right. And so it's not that I wouldn't have done it. I don't know that I would have owned it as fully, maybe.
Yeah.
So
there may be less chance that you would do it, or.
Right.
something, yeah.
Yeah, what I appreciate about that conversation is that, again, I owned it. I mean, you know, you may have put a path out there and I made some choices in that path, but ultimately they were mine.
Fantastic. Great. Thanks very much for talking about that.